Yeah, so it was a busy day working in with leaves out in the front yard and in the
Lily, stop. Can you
backyard.
Can you speak up a little bit, Charlie?
Can I speak? Yeah, I can speak up.
Thank you.
Usually my wife can hear me down at the other end of the house, half a mile away, but I'll make sure that I'm talking into the speaker instead of mumbling. Anyway, it's good to have you all here again. And we'll have some more fun tonight. See if you have any questions and have some fun. We've got our parakeet participant participating there. She is. What's her name again?
Her name is Eureka.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
Eureka. So anyway, we're just happy she's squawking away and thrilled to have Eureka with us. And good to see all the rest of you too. So I see there's a hand up already. Is that a question or is that like? we're
Kind of
just
a welcoming
checking it out?
statement.
Go for it.
You know, at the end of every one of these classes, we congratulate the class and its instructors and its gurus. And I hate to be critical, but I miss seeing the movies guy, Virgil and Marilyn.
Yeah.
Oh,
If anybody
yeah.
ever sees him- If anybody ever sees them, tell them, hey, some people miss you.
That's a good thought.
They were characters.
Yeah, it definitely was fun having them here and who knows, maybe they'll return for an encore visit one day.
Well, if somebody sees them, tell them, yeah, we want them back. Oh, I do anyway.
I second that. Yeah.
Thanks for the input. Anybody else have anything they want to share with the group before we carry on with some other issues? Yes, Ed. Okay.
Oh, Charlie, this is Lynn.
Hello, Lynn.
Yeah, hi there. I wanted Ken to know that I'm in touch with Virgil and Marilyn, and they're doing fine, really busy. I don't know whether they'll be back or not, but it's been fun to email them. They gave me a really good hummus recipe that I'm now able to have hummus, my bean source pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah, but they're doing really well. Very nice people.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Lynn.
Yes, you're welcome.
Anybody else? I think there is maybe one new person, maybe two, probably one. If you care to share how you found out about the classes and just unmute yourself and who told you about them and just kind of curious.
I don't know if you mean me, but I was coming up for a while until a few months ago, so I'm back.
Well, welcome,
Thanks.
Nikki. We're glad to have you back. I see there's also another new name, Noonan, but you know, you don't have to speak up or anything like that. We just kind of love to know how you found out about the classes and motivates us to keep after other doctors and providers, nurse practitioners, physician assistants.
Hi, we were here last week. We were referred by our doctor at LMG.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't recognize the name from last week, but glad to have you back. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and just speak up, or put them in the chat if you feel more comfortable, whatever it might be.
I'm Sandra, and I am returning. I haven't been here for a while. So I just wanted to share, I have had some complications with surgery, and a 3-day stay in the hospital ended up being over 2 weeks, and then another 10 days at a rehab center.
Wow.
The issues of getting vegan food were incredible. The hospital was best. But you know, it wasn't really vegan or plant-based. But when I went to the rehab center, it was atrocious. It was so horrible. And I talked to the dietitian when I first checked in, and I said, I'm vegan, plant-based. And she says, well, what does that mean? And I said, it means I don't eat processed foods and other things, but you know, and I don't eat any dairy products. So she thought that meant raw food diet.
Uh-huh.
And I struggled for 6 days in there. It was only the last 2 or 3 days that I was able to get a vegetarian meal because I wasn't even getting, I was getting less than 800 calories a day. And because of the complications in the hospital, I had severe anemia. I was bleeding internally and had to have blood transfusions. And so I couldn't eat 800 calories a day. So they had no clue what a vegan diet was. What I'd really like to see more education out there for people that find themselves in a situation where they can't cook their own food. So that was my biggest challenge over the last little while.
Well, Sandra, we're right with you that we want to see more of that also. We actually went before the state legislature to insist that hospitals and healthcare facilities provide plant-based meals for their patients, but that was almost a few years ago before the pandemic hit, and it was knocked out of the box by the dairy industry at the time and hasn't come back. New York has managed to shift its way through the politics and make it happen, and I think parts of California perhaps, but we're going to keep working on it.
Good.
So yeah, that's a real challenge to get actually healthy food in our healthcare facilities. And thanks for sharing that story. Scott, did you have something you were going to add?
Oh, no, just what you were saying about New York. Yeah, so it's in the state hospitals in New York, they now have, in New York City, it's it defaults to plant-based diet. So unless you ask for the regular diet, they're going to give you plant-based diet because of Eric Adams, the mayor there, is plant-based and reverses diabetes with a plant-based diet. And so he's used his influence. And then they also have like 2 different days of the week, there's plant-based options in the public schools in New York City. So there's lots of progress going on, just not everywhere. So, I mean, when I was in hospital, I didn't have any trouble. I was 3 nights in the hospital summer before last when I broke my leg, and I said vegan, and they gave me some choices. I looked at the menu myself, and I had like a vegetable soup one night with, I had a potato, I had pasta with marinara sauce, I had lots of steamed vegetables, and, you know, of course, rolls and things like that. So, but I didn't have any trouble eating plant-based. But yeah, maybe the rehab facility is a little different story.
Yeah, I was at Riverbend, and Riverbend was much better.
Yeah, I was at Riverbend also. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the rehab center didn't have a clue what
Wow.
plant-based food was, and vegan, it was just loaded with oil. I mean, vegetarian, when I said, just give me vegetarian.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, it was stir fry with lots of oil and lots of gravies and cheese and,
Yeah.
oh, geez, I guess it's better than starving. That's where I went.
Yeah,
Wow.
right.
So perhaps some nonprofit organization could take up the challenge of convincing some more of these facilities to change, and maybe Dr. Colgrove could tell us about the recent events about forming a nonprofit organization to carry on a group of people who believe like we do.
Well, yeah, I'm just really impressed with that story about being in the hospital and not getting the food that you need. That's really important. I mean, that's part of healing is really getting the right food. So it's a really impressive story. I think Dr. Ross is definitely right about the idea that maybe we can have the Eugene plant-based providers tackle that as a concern that people are not understanding basic nutritional terms like vegan, and that is a huge problem. Oh my gosh, to have people not understand what vegan is about, I don't know, that's just crazy. So yeah, it's still vegan. If you say vegan, it can still be pretty oily, right? We can, that's not gonna knock out the oils. I don't think we're gonna have too much success with getting truly whole food, plant-based kind of menus. That would be ideal, but right. I think we're gonna still have to live with a little bit of oil while we're recovering. But yeah, it's something I'll bring to the group that we need to maybe reach out to all the different hospitals and providers that just to kind of make sure they're educated about what this means. And maybe we can put even a whole food plant-based category in there and really just do some basic education that it just means what it means, how it's different than vegan. But,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and we're
Okay.
an official nonprofit as of November 1st, right?
Yay.
Our group, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's official.
All right, well, thanks for sharing that. And then we have our med student, Lisa. You were there before, maybe you had a phone call and had to beg out, but do you have any news from the Southern California and how things are going down there? Do they provide plant-based foods in the hospital you're working at for patients or not?
That's a good question. I don't know specifically for patients. I know they do their best. But I know in the cafeteria that everyone has access to, they actually do a pretty good job. Today they had like taco bowls with brown rice, black beans, tofu, and veggies like squash. And there's an option for shrimp too. And then yesterday we had baked potatoes. So they're pretty good with the plant-based stuff. Not everyone likes it though, which is funny. People wish they had the old cafeteria, which was a lot less healthy. But I think it's getting in the right direction. For the patients, I think it's a little bit harder, especially when they've got like a cardio diet or a renal diet, and all of that could be taken care of with a plant-based diet. But we're not there yet.
But one thing based on what was written in the chat there, when I was in Washington, D.C. back in August for a nutrition conference through Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine, we had a whole presentation by Universal Meals, a group called Universal Meals. And they work with the Culinary Institute of America, and they're trying to spread their menus to all hospitals, nursing homes, hotels, any place that serves large quantities of food to large numbers of people. And they eliminate the kind of the 12 most common allergens. And so it's essentially plant-based. There is some oil. We sampled the food that they cook, but it's it's no animal products, no dairy, no nuts, because it's all the typical allergens. They even keep soy out. And so there's a whole list of the top, I think it was 9 or 12 most common allergens that people have, and they call it Universal Meals. So it includes everybody. So then, what's nice about that is then you don't have to worry about, you know, vegetarian versus vegan versus gluten-free versus all the different little types of diets that people have. It kind of eliminates those most common allergens. So it does eliminate gluten already and all the different things. And I think that's it was a really good program, really good place to start. So hopefully that will take off, the universal meals. And I wrote about it in the newsletter for Eugene Plant-Based Providers when I got back from that conference. I think it was in the September newsletter, but it's, yeah, check it out if you're interested in that, universal meals.
Okay. Anybody else? Going once or twice, maybe 3 times, and we'll on.
I just wanted to say hi to Nikki.
Okay, Dorothea. Saying hi to Nikki.
Hi, I had a question.
Yes, go ahead, Doris.
I have some children that are RSV. They'll have this RSV thing. And I don't know if you have any insight on what to do or how to get them better, or what's the process?
How
Yeah.
they maybe have Eric take that.
Yeah. RSV is a common cold that is just tends to hit every winter, and we have kind of had not lucky, but we've had a couple of years where we haven't really seen much of it because of all the masking and isolation that everyone did. So now the viruses are just like back with a vengeance. Now get everyone back together, and I've never seen this much virus in my life. And RSV is one of the big ones that's going around, but it's basically just a bad cold. The governor said there was a state of emergency because of RSV, but really that's for kids that are like 6 months and below, really 12 months, but yeah, 6 to 12 months and below, and particularly if they're premature. So it's not a scary illness. It's just a cold. So do your typical kind of cold stuff. And, I don't know what the ages are, but you want to think about maybe even doing some elderberry, since there's some science behind that. Doing some honey and tea for cough is a good idea. You can certainly do some zinc, and then that can be acutely helpful. Making sure they get plenty of fluids. Don't chase them around with food. Sometimes when your body is infected, it's actually beneficial to the body not to eat too much, and to actually, the studies are, and Dr. Gregor has videos on this about the benefits of fasting when you're sick or when you have cancer, either one.
Do adults get that? Do adults get that? Because all my grandchildren have it.
Oh, RSV?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it up to 2 times a year. You can get it for the rest of your life. It can affect elderly people more. It can even be deadly in the elderly people. Mainly it's deadly for the really young, super young kids under a few months of life that are especially premature.
Okay.
But yeah, adults can get it. It's just a bad cold. So nothing too fancy, nothing too special.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nice to have a bit of expertise in the room on various topics. Any other thoughts from anyone? Any questions? Anything you're interested in?
Last week, did you guys go through what you're having for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we could do that now.
Oh, is that something that I wasn't sure if you guys had already talked about? I don't mean to
No.
push it. I'm just wondering.
No, I think it's a good time to kind of share a little bit now.
All right.
So Christine is making some kind of, I thought it was going to be a lentil loaf, but now she's doing something with cauliflower and it's going to be a loaf of something with mashed potatoes and green beans and some cranberry sauce. But she's going to make this pumpkin pie, which my mouth sort of waters when I talk about it. It's got a nut crust. It doesn't have a flour crust on it, which she grinds these nuts together and makes the crust. And then we have a small serving, and then we freeze the rest of it. So we're not eating the whole pie in 2 days, which I could do, or maybe in 1 day. We cut it into small slices, freeze it, and then we take it out and eat it over the next couple months intermittently. So that's what we're planning on doing.
Yeah, for us, we're Angel's making, never made it before. It's a chickpea cutlet, so is what it's called, but I'm not sure all the ingredients that are in it, but a chickpea cutlet. So that's kind of like the meat alternative. And then mashed potatoes and gravy and some stuffing. It's a plant-based stuffing. So, Thanksgiving is a time we eat a little bit more bread because of that. So it's just a treat to have the stuffing. And then Brussels sprouts with some other mixed veggies that are roasted with pecans. And then, so the mashed potatoes, the gravy, the Brussels sprouts, the cutlet. And then we're going to have for dessert, because it's this kind of chocolate loaf that she makes. It's just with dark chocolate and little oat flour and dates. And so we're having that. And then I think she's making some peanut butter cookies too, mostly for my sister who eats mostly plant-based, and she's also has celiac, so they're gluten-free, so you can use oat flour. And then that's what we're having for the dessert. What about you, Eric? What are you guys having?
Well, we have a bunch of family that live in town, so, and a lot of them are sad eaters, so standard American diet eaters. Yeah. So I'm happening to bring some of my own stuff, and this is one of them that I'm bringing. It's I don't know if you can see it, but it's a loaf. Yeah, it's a vegetable loaf, and it has I've never made this before, so it's got spinach and brown rice and mushroom meatloaf. Yeah, so kind of it looks like a really good loaf, and people say that this is like the reviews say that people would say it's their favorite vegetarian loaf that they've had. So I'm excited about trying it.
Where'd you get that, Eric?
My mom found it, and she showed it to me and said, this would be really good at Thanksgiving. I said, I definitely agree. I looked at a few different things, but I like this.
What's the name of it?
So it's it just says vegetable loaf. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Who else?
Well,
Yeah,
this is
Marcia.
Marcia. I am planning to make plain old sweet potatoes, a Waldorf salad from Brittany Giroudi, and a Chef AJ, what is it called? Wild rice stuffing with apple. And then I want to have a little dessert, so I'm going to make a cran pear bar from Brittany Giroudi, and she's whole food plant-based. And also from Chef AJ, strawberry jam bars. And I'm going to share that with about 60 people.
Wow.
I know. Whew. They're going to have probably that standard American diet of turkey and ham, but I have my plans already thought out.
Well, good for you. That's great. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Who else?
When you say plain old sweet potatoes, are you scooping them out or slicing them longitudinally or what?
No, what I'm doing is I'm going to peel them, cut them up, put them in water, boil them, strain them, put them in a bowl, serve them. It's simple. I don't want anything on them. So that's what I'm doing.
I
I've
forgot
done
to
that for the
mention.
past few years.
I forgot to mention I'm doing sweet potatoes too, but I'm talking about the purple ones that I get the Chinese
Sundance.
sunrise,
Or sunrise,
sunrise.
Aren't they Japanese sweet potatoes?
Yeah, the Japanese sweet potatoes that I put nothing on. I know I've brought this up numerous times before, but they are my favorite food. And they absolutely need nothing. You just kind of cook them. I boil them and then I actually cool them down and heat them up again in the microwave a little bit because it tends to get them sweeter for some reason. When you cool it down, it does something to the natural sugars that's what I found anyways, is that it makes them sweeter if I cool it down then heat them up again. So I'm going to bring that too. That's going to be hopefully a big hit because it's just nothing better. And
There are
it's
nutrients and fiber in the skin. Do you eat that also or just the inside?
No, I definitely eat the whole thing. I just slice it up and eat the whole thing. It's like candy.
I just wanted to kind of get that out there. Not everybody likes to do that, but if you haven't given it a try, give it a try.
I think so. I think there's a lot of nutrients there, and I'd feel bad to throw that away. I just wash the peels very good. I just really scrub the heck out of those things, and I think that's totally fine. You know, especially when you're cooking and boiling it I typically boil it for about 20 minutes and then cool it down and heat it up in the microwave. Nothing's gonna survive on that. So I think it's the way to do it.
Again, someone was asking, what was it? It's a Japanese sweet potato. Scott put it in the chat room.
The flesh is dark purple and the skin is kind of just a generic kind of light brown, pale, kind of ugly looking potato. But it's inside it only turns bright purple after you cooked it and cooled it and heated up again. It's kind of a variegated light purple before you cook it, but after you cook it, it turns just this incredible dark purple. So, and that goes along with the taste. If you eat it when it's still light purple, it's not as sweet. But once it turns dark purple, it's just the most amazing thing ever. And it's very creamy. It needs absolutely nothing to moisten it because it's so moist and creamy.
They could use you on the potato board, Japanese potato board. That's a good pitch.
I've talked about that so much. I'm sorry, guys.
It's also good, Eric, that you cool it down because actually, if you remember from I think it was one of Dr. Greger's videos, if you take a potato after you've cooked it and you cool it down in the fridge and then reheat it, it actually lowers the glycemic index and you get essentially more resistant starch out of it. It's actually overall healthier for you to do it that way. Yeah.
Interesting. No, that's not why I was doing it, but that's right. I forgot that. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that video. Yeah. Cool.
I love all sweet potatoes and I think they're all good, but I like to bake them and then eat them, and I eat them cold and hot, so I don't really care.
Great.
I find for sweet potatoes, the easiest way for me to do it is just to heat the oven up to 400, 425, throw them in there for an hour, just scrub them and throw them in, and then they're done.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they're bigger, you wait just a little bit. You know, you can fill them when they get squishy and soft, and little caramelization leaks out sometimes. Super easy.
That's how I do my sweet potatoes. And I forgot what I was going to say.
This is going to be called the sweet potato cooking session here before Thanksgiving. This is wonderful. I love this. Go ahead, Ed.
I learned that in just straight baking, if you slice like cross section, like into dollars, they get done in a little more than half the time.
Okay.
I like the jewel yams. Those seem to be the sweetest.
Okay, another thought. Anybody else? We're talking about what we're planning to eat for Thanksgiving. We've been on the potato, and it maybe that's going to be the food of of choice, but there are probably other options that some of you are planning on eating in Thanksgiving. And we're just kind of curious about it. What do you plan to have on the menu? Either where you're eating at your own home or going somewhere else?
I was going to try and make a vegan Wellington.
A vegan Wellington?
Yeah.
So what would be in the vegan Wellington?
Oh, I lost it. Hold on a minute. It disappeared on me.
Okay.
It's got carrots, celery. Oh, come on. Get up here. You belong. How about the noise in the back? Okay. I know it's got celery, onions. I can't remember what else. And like I said, it disappeared on me.
Okay.
One additional note on sweet potatoes. I believe that historically, while mashed potatoes and turkey were not on the original Thanksgiving menu, sweet potatoes or yams were.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Anybody else?
I'll offer something. I'm brand new. This is my first time. So I'm listening for the first time.
Oh.
So Donna, how did you find out about the classes?
I found out from talking to my insurance broker, and she went to some kind of a health fair, and one of you gave her your card. And I was interested in getting some nutrition counseling because I discovered I'm pre-diabetic and was having trouble finding anything through my insurance company. And she offered me this website, and I just thought it was great. And I'd done a little preview of some of your prior resources. And so I'm really looking forward to joining when you start up again. But I'm sorry I'm late. I had it in my head it was 7:30 instead of 7. So.
It's not a problem. You're very welcome, and you can come whenever it's convenient for you.
Thank you.
And, you know, that we do have the website, which you probably, the livelifestylemedicine.com,
Yes.
that you probably looked over a bit. We
Yes.
also have the med student who's been doing counseling. If you need some one-on-one help. And so there's no cost for anything that we do here. It's all for free. It's all to support each other. And so whatever people need, we try to fill that need in an attempt to get more and more people to improve their health by transitioning their diet to whole plant foods.
Right. So one of the things I'm adding to our dinner, we have a big family, so they expect more of the traditional foods, but I moved away. I'm not going to do a sweet potato casserole like I've done in the past. Instead, I'm doing root vegetable skewers. So I'm putting beets and carrots and I can't remember, little potatoes are on there too. I think I have 4 foods that I'm putting on those skewers. And fruit skewers. So, yeah.
That sounds great.
Okay, I found the recipe.
Kim, I'll get to you in a moment. Yes, Marcia.
Okay, it's a pastry sheet, puff pastry sheet. And I think it's big in carrots, celery, lentils, vegetable broth, yeast, nutritional yeast, onion powder, garlic powder, tamari sauce, sage, thyme, black pepper, breadcrumbs, and non-dairy milk. It calls for olive oil, but I'll leave it out.
Okay,
Great, that
so
sounds good.
thanks for sharing that. Kim?
Oh, I was just gonna say that instead of the green bean stuff, if you've never roasted green beans, they're delicious. And you can do it in an air fryer or in the oven, and they caramelize too a little bit, kind of like they end up kind of like the Chinese dry fried beans. So it's something that people don't typically think about when think about roasting. I mean, sweet potatoes, yes, and sweet potato fries and stuff, but I think green beans are one of the best things you can roast. So that you might want to give that a try.
Thank you. Some good ideas here. For Donna and whoever else might be interested, Lisa Chickler, our med student, has put her information in the chat room and would be happy to hook up with you. So just check the chat. And
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Ken?
What was that Ollie Polly milk?
I didn't
It was
quite
in a
get that.
recipe. It was in a recipe we just heard a couple of speakers ago, not very long ago. We heard a recipe for a dish I didn't get the name of.
Vegetable Wellington, did you get?
It seems like the one that ended with some kind of roly-poly milk.
I didn't quite get that.
And nobody knows what I'm talking about.
I don't know.
What was the recipe? Excuse me. After the Wellington.
There was a recipe of doing skewers, beets and whatever else, potatoes, and I don't know if there were other vegetables on there. Broccoli.
Here, yeah, you can put any vegetables on there.
Carrots or broccoli or whatever you want to put on there.
Excuse me.
And then there
Maybe
was the green beans that you could air fry, and they get a little caramelized. Okay, don't go away too far. We need to see where you're at in case you're choking there, Ken. Of course,
you're gonna do a virtual Heimlich maneuver.
A virtual Heimlich, yes. We can call 911 from here, whatever. I don't have your address though.
It's a piece of whole wheat product.
We knew that whole wheat bread was not healthy for you.
Not a whole wheat
We've
bread.
been telling you that for a while. I hope you're okay soon.
Me too.
Okay.
But the person that gave us the Wellington recipe, like write it down in the chat.
Yeah, so Marcia, if you're able to write that down in the chat, Ken is interested in that Wellington recipe. Okay.
This is what I get for talking while I'm eating.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other foods that they're any treats or anything that they're interested in partaking for Thanksgiving? What's the bird eating? Eureka for Thanksgiving.
I don't know. I might give her some, I don't know. I gotta give her less fruit. She needs
less fruit?
She probably needs more leafy greens.
Okay.
And so do I, so.
I thought you might get a millet treat or something like that. I don't know. I think about millet as sort of bird food, but occasionally I'll eat it. It's not, that's what I used to think of it. But a lot of people eat millet and like it as regular food. All right. Anybody gonna have anything with quinoa in it?
I'll share something. It could have
Okay.
quinoa in it if you wanted to, but I've never done this before. It's a stuffed pumpkin. So you put the stuffing in the pumpkin and then you roast it in the oven. So let me share a picture really quick if I could.
Okay, share away.
It looks like this. So
Oh, very
I watched-
cute.
yeah, I watched a little video on it and I have a leftover pumpkin from Halloween that hasn't been carved yet, so it should still be safe. So I'm gonna try stuffing the pumpkin and then you put that in the oven and it should infuse some of the flavor, I guess.
So tell us what things you're putting in for stuffing here. Potatoes or I guess you could use quinoa or
Yeah, I think you can use whatever you like. So
rice.
yeah, I think we're gonna do like rice and potatoes and kale, mushrooms, and then a lot of seasoning. I haven't quite figured it all out yet, so I'll have to let you know next week.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We're curious. Since you mentioned the word mushroom, not everybody loves mushrooms, but someone may have a favorite mushroom. I'm used to eating the button mushrooms, the white or the portobello, and I've really never ventured out into any other kind of mushrooms, but I've heard other people say shiitake or oyster or this or that. And I don't get it because I haven't really tried them. Does anybody have any strong feelings about the best mushroom on the planet? Yeah, go ahead,
Hi,
Kieri.
this is Kayeri, and I love chanterelles. But there's a way to, so there's mushroom people, at least 2 organic mushroom growers that show up at either Saturday market, the farmer's market part, or at the Christmas venture in the food area. And they will sell you, they have a whole bunch of different kinds of mushrooms. So you can go and just buy a little brown bag full of mushrooms that you can pick from and give them a try. And they have recipes there too. And they love to talk about mushrooms. So if you want information, just ask them a question.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'd like to learn a little bit more about different mushrooms. My taste buds are kind of changing, and I really didn't like them for my first 8 years on the whole food plant-based diet. But now I'm starting to like, where's the mushroom if we forget to put it in? It's like, it tastes pretty good and I'm looking for it. But again, it's just those simple, inexpensive mushrooms, not fancy. And I have been kind of curious about the others. So thanks for that information. Anybody else? Any special foods or treats? Yes, Kim.
So I just wanted to mention that
Sandra next.
with Lisa's pumpkin recipe, I just got this cute little, it's called a red curry squash, and it looks like a pumpkin, but a friend of mine made it the other day, sliced and roasted it, and it was absolutely delicious. So you could do something like this with the stuffing too. So it's just a new squash variety that's very sweet and very creamy, and you can eat the rind too when you roast it. So
And
they're
it's
really
called
nice.
a what? What again?
Called a red curry, K-U-R-I.
K-U-R-I.
I got it at Sprouts. It's organic, so I can't wait
Thank
to
you.
try it.
Appreciate that. Sandra?
Yeah, I'm not making this for Thanksgiving, but I made it a little over 2 months ago before I got sick. And I got the recipe from the, what is it, Natural Grocers magazine that I get. And it says it's cheesy, but it's not. It doesn't have any cheese in it. It's broccoli and quinoa and I think it's red peppers in it and garbanzo beans and spices. And it's really delicious. Even my kids who scoff at me for my diets loved it.
Does it
So,
have nutritional yeast in it
yes.
to give it the cheese-like
Yeah.
flavor?
Yeah, it does have nutritional yeast and, turmeric and a host of other things. Black pepper, ground black pepper. Yeah, a whole bunch of
Sandra,
things.
what's the name of that again?
Well, I got it from the magazine maybe 3 months ago. Because whenever I see a good recipe, I tear it out and try to make it right away before I forget. So it was not the Natural Grocers, here in town. I belong to, and they send me every month their specials, and they always have recipes and information in it. So it's
Do you
just
remember the name of the recipe?
it's just called broccoli and quinoa with garbanzo beans is the whole recipe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it wasn't hard to make, and it was really good. I can't eat a lot of broccoli because I'm on warfarin, so I have to be careful how often I make it, but it was really good and easy to make.
I'd like to kind of go over that issue since you mentioned that you can't eat a lot of broccoli because you're on warfarin. If you eat the same amount of greens each week and you get your body adjusted, just like when you first went on warfarin, you can adjust the dose of warfarin if you transition to more greens in your diet. You just generally have to just up the dose a little. And I've found in the few people I've attempted to do that, they haven't needed any adjustment in their dose, that they seem to tolerate increased greens without really lowering their pro-time INR. So
Yeah, and I
if
work.
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I right down the hallway from my clinic at Oregon Medical Group at Garden Way, we have the ACC clinic, the coagulation clinic, and I've talked to the coagulation nurse there, and I've had many patients, as you know, that I've educated on a whole food plant-based diet, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's no problem whatsoever. You just have to be consistent from week to week. So whatever level of greens you eat in a week, you want to keep that steady, because if you eat tons one week, you have to usually increase the Coumadin dosage a little bit, but then if you suddenly don't hardly eat any the next week, then your dosage will be too high and you have to lower it. So it's just good to be consistent from week to week, and then it's no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's what they tell me also, because I go to Ann at the anticoagulant center at the same place. And but when I was in the hospital, my pro time went way down because I wasn't getting the diet. And so I was
Right.
still struggling, and then I became anemic because of the loss of blood. So I need all the things. You sent me a list, Scott, of the things that have more iron in them. Most of them are green leafy vegetables and broccoli. So trying to get a balance and get my anemia up so that I'm no longer anemic has been a real struggle the last few times. But this is a great recipe, and I just can't add too much more broccoli. I have to keep it, as both of you are saying, I have to keep my greens pretty much the same through the weeks so that I don't go up or down
Yeah.
They'll take my blood, they'll thicken my blood. So
Well, thanks for sharing the recipe. Anybody else have any other things? Ed?
I want to revisit mushrooms for just a moment. I realize we left that a few minutes ago, but I remembered that I read just today that the fungus is thought to be the most common thing that grows in the ground on Earth. And they don't really know how much there is because most of it is hidden under the ground. But they have found single colonies extending up to a mile.
Of mushroom.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Well, maybe we'll be eating more of that as time goes on. Eric.
Yeah, also about mushrooms. There are lots of fancy mushrooms and they're really good, and I love all kinds of mushrooms. But also just know that, well, at least from Dr. Greger's team, that the white button mushrooms tend to be the best for anti-cancer effects, and seem to have the most kind of effects, just the plain old garden variety white button mushrooms. So particularly prostate cancer.
Thanks for reminding us of that. You can eat foods for taste, but you can eat them if you're trying to ward off disease. So it's important to know that. Anybody using garlic in any of the foods?
I use garlic.
So if you're using garlic, just remember that if you're gonna cook garlic, you wanna, you take fresh garlic clove and you chop it up, and you need to let it rest for about 15 minutes or so to allow it to do its work before you put it in the pan to heat it up. So chop it up, let it sit on the counter while you're doing something else before you actually cook it, if you want to get the maximum health benefits, the anti-cancer and the whatever else it does, immune boosting and those sorts of things. And remember, broccoli is sort of similar, but broccoli, you can kind of counteract that by adding a pinch of mustard powder. Even if you cook broccoli when you just freshly chopped it up, if you added some mustard powder to it, a pinch, you would get the full benefit of sulforaphane. Okay, any other thoughts from anyone? I think that was pretty good for food.
Yeah, you want to hit question number 28?
Oh,
Yeah.
Get these last
wait,
questions
hold
done.
on. Ken's trying to say something, but he's muted himself.
Okay, Ken.
I don't think I'm muted now, right?
No, we can hear you.
Well, I cook with mushrooms sometimes, but not always, or not often. You certainly got my attention when you said agaricus campestris, whatever you say it, the white mushroom, was good for cancer, prostate cancer. I had no idea. I have not heard that. So that's exciting. Anything that can help, manage prostate cancer, non-metastasized cells, interests me, and that includes tomatoes. And now I can eat lots of mushrooms. Also, white mushrooms. Thanks to tonight and you guys sharing that.
I'll put that video in the chat.
But it's a Greger video, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then about fungus. I don't know if anybody else has seen Fantastic Fungi. It's an incredible movie that'll knock your socks off about what fungi's been used for, what it's going to be used for, how it could save the planet if we let it. It's just an amazing video. The story of Paul Stamos, who is the guru of fungi. He's out of Seattle. He's made an incredible industry of fungi. So Fantastic Fungi, I believe it's on Netflix. Everybody should see it. There's things on it that you never thought about, but it's a very positive movie.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Ken.
Okay, Ken, I'll put that in the chat, the video, the Greger video.
I've seen the fungi movie and I agree with Ken. It is fantastic.
Okay, there you go. Scott, I don't think we'll get through tonight's the rest of the question, but it's okay. It's been fun. We're gonna go to question 28, and then we'll come back to the group here in a moment. This has really been pretty good, actually. And sometimes we just try to go with the flow. So we're going to go down to question 28, which is, what's the significance of IGF-1? What is that? Insulin-like growth factor 1. So I'm going to give you a moment to think about it while I scan down here to the answer. And here's the answer. Insulin-like growth factor 1 is a hormone that is found in all dairy products. It's insulin-like growth factor, which is the hormone that encourages the growth of a small mammal into a larger one. You have this IGF-1 in all mammal milks. That means in breast milk, cow's milk. So the higher levels of IGF-1 are found in many people with cancer. So that sort of makes sense, because if you have a hormone that promotes growth, it could promote the growth of cancer. So if you have many people with higher levels of IGF-1 that are diagnosed with cancer, you could kind of speculate that, geez, the IGF-1 is promoting the growth of these cancers. So let's take a look at this video, see what Gregor has to say about it. Well, it was a video, but it's his.
You could probably
we
click
can
on it in
just
there.
click on the protein intake and IGF-1 production, or a one-stop cancer shop. Let's try this one. There we go.
Why do centenarians escape cancer? People who live to be over 100 years old. As we get older, our risk of getting and dying from cancer grows year by year, but once you hit around 85, 90, your cancer risk starts to drop. That kind of makes sense. I mean, if you didn't get it by then, maybe you're never going to get it. If you live that long, maybe it's a sign there's something special about you. It seems that centenarians are endowed with a particular resistance to cancer. So what's their secret? Well, every day, 50 billion of our cells die, and every day 50 billion new ones are born. There's a balance, otherwise our body would atrophy, or shrink, or get too big and crowded. Now, sometimes we need to grow, like when we're a baby, or that growth spurt around puberty. Right? Our cells don't get larger when we grow up, they get more numerous. A child's hand may only be made up about 50 billion cells and may have to add a 500 billion or so growing up. Once we've already grown up, we don't want a lot of extra cells hanging around. I mean, we still need our cells to grow and divide, right? Out with the old, in with the new. We just don't want to be making more cells than we're putting out to pasture. When you're a kid, extra growth is good, but when you're an adult, extra growth can mean a tumor. How do our cells know when to tip the balance in favor of more dividing and less dying, and when to come back into balance? Well, a key signal is IGF-1, a growth hormone called insulin-like growth factor number 1. Levels go up when you're a kid, so you grow, and then come back down. Should your levels stay a bit too high as an adult, though, there's this constant message to our cells. Grow, 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 divide, don't die, keep going, keep growing. And so, not surprisingly, the more IGF-1 we have in our bloodstream, the higher our risk for cancer. More IGF-1, more prostate cancer. More IGF-1, more breast cancer. Of course, it's not the original tumor that tends to kill you, it's the metastases. IGF-1 is a growth factor. It helps things grow, so it helps cancer cells break off from the main tumor, migrate into surrounding tissues, and invade the bloodstream. And, what do you think helps breast cancer get into the bone? IGF-1. And the liver, IGF-1. Lung, brain, lymph nodes, IGF-1. Helps transform normal cells into cancer cells in the first place, then helps them survive, proliferate, self-renew, grow, migrate, invade, stabilize into new tumors, and even helps hook the blood supply up to the new tumor. IGF-1 is a growth hormone that makes things grow. That's what it does. But too much growth when we're all grown up can mean cancer. Next, we'll turn to how we can prevent all this.
So hopefully you all understand how we can prevent all this. What's the simple solution? Don't be drinking milk, human or mammal milk. You can drink plant milk, and the milk industry argues that plant milk should not be labeled milk because they want to sell their milk products. And maybe that would be a good way for us to think about it. You know, when you think about other mammals and whether they drink milk or eat products made from milk, you find out that once they're weaned, they don't really drink milk like we do. So if you're going to drink something that looks white like milk, keep it to a plant because it won't have IGF-1. And whether you decide to drink cow's milk or you like camel milk or goat milk, they all have IGF-1 in them if they're a mammal. And you might want to think twice before you raise your level of IGF-1. Any thoughts on that?
It's also in meat, in any animal product's going to have some IGF-1. So not just dairy products, but dairy products are the highest, but also eating any animal muscle is going to provide some IGF-1 too.
So that's even more food for thought as to why you're doing what you're choosing to do. Yes, Marcia.
I'm sticking with plants. That's all I can say.
I'll second that. Okay, let's go back to 29. Ken, you had a question, or is that just a leftover hand? I know you're interested in cancer issues, so might be just a leftover hand. Okay, let's go on to number 29. Maybe we'll get to 30 today. 29. Do meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy carry contaminants? Let's take a look at that. Number 29. I'll bet you all know the answer to that. So PCBs, dioxin, mercury, cadmium, and lead are all concerns. View this video and consider your food choices carefully. So let's take a look and see what this video has to say. Gregor comes through again with a little more information.
This study on the carcinogenic risks associated with the intake of various meats estimated the risk was so great that we may not want to feed beef, pork, or chicken to kids more than like 5 times a month. This was in Europe, where lamb contamination is a particular problem. In the United States, if there was any standout, it would be chicken and PBDEs, flame-retardant chemicals, not only compared to other meats, but other countries. U.S. chickens are like 10 to 20 times more contaminated than samples taken from other countries that have been tested. Though diet is not the only source of exposure, as those eating vegetarian have only about 25% lower levels in their bloodstream than those eating meat, though a large proportion of that may be from chicken. For other chemicals, diet may play a larger role. Studies of the pollutants in the breast milk of vegetarians dating back over 30 years have found the average vegetarian levels of some pollutants were only 1 to 2% as high as the national average. In fact, for the 6 out of 7 pollutants they looked at, there wasn't even overlap in the range of scores. The highest vegetarian value was lower than the lowest value obtained in the general population. This is presumed to be because these pollutants concentrate up the food chain. So by eating lots from all the way down the food chain, plants, those eating vegetarian, may have an edge. For example, dioxins. And meat, fish, and dairy believed to contribute almost all of the dioxin body exposure. Indeed, if you look at those eating strictly plant-based diets, they may only have about a third of the level of dioxins and PCBs, or even less than a fifth circulating throughout their bodies. This study really struck me. India has been facing a major problem of treating its millions of pounds of electronic waste every year. And these poor workers of these electronic waste recycling plants can be exposed to high levels of toxic chemicals, ending up with this kind of concentration of PCBs in their bloodstream, twice as high as those living about 250 miles away along the coast. But these were non-vegetarian workers at the waste plant. The PCB levels of the vegetarians working at the same plant was even lower. The problem with these cross-sectional studies is that we can't single out the diet. Maybe vegetarians have other lifestyle behaviors that protect them. You don't know until you put it to the test. Change people's diets and see what happens. That's hard to do with persistent pollutants like PCBs, which may take literally decades to detoxify from the body, but we can get rid of heavy metals like mercury in a matter of months. And indeed, within 3 months of the exclusion of meat, poultry, fish, and eggs from their diets, there was a significant drop in the levels of toxic heavy metals in their bodies, including mercury, cadmium, and lead, up to about a 30% drop within 3 months. What if we just stick to organic meat? Certified organic meat comes from livestock that are fed with organically produced feed that is free from pesticides and animal byproducts by law, and therefore one would assume that there should be a lower accumulation of chemical residues. However, on a practical level, there are simply no studies on the chemical residue content in organic meat, until now. Researchers acquired 76 samples of different kinds of meat, both organic and conventional, and quantified their levels of contamination with 33 different carcinogenic persistent organic pollutants. After all, the ingestion of food contributes more than 90% to total current exposure to these compounds, especially food from animal origin. On the other hand, an increasing number of consumers are choosing organic. In fact, organic food production increased like 50% during the last decade. So are consumers of organic meat protected or not? Well, no sample was completely free of carcinogenic contaminants, which is to be expected, given how polluted our world is these days. But what was surprising was that the difference between organically and conventionally produced meats were minimal. Furthermore, the current pattern of meat consumption exceeded the maximum limits either way. Strikingly, the consumption of organically produced meat not only doesn't appear to diminish this carcinogenic risk, but was sometimes found to be even higher. Bottom line, sadly, is that the consumption of organic meat does not diminish the carcinogenic potential associated with the intake of these pollutants.
So, how many of you have heard your friends, family members, well, I eat organic grass-fed beef, or whatever it might be? I've heard that over and over again. And if they care to look at the science a bit more, they might find that the advantages that they're getting are not so advantageous to their health. Just trying to stretch your brains a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
I have a friend who I said that the meat, dairy, and oil is the cause of heart attacks and strokes and all that stuff. And she said, well, we don't eat meat, we eat elk. And I said, oh, well, isn't that a meat? Oh, no, they eat off the land. And I thought, now he's had 2 heart attacks, and they just had his chest pulled open so they could take the big vein and move it over to the other side. And I think, well, keep eating your elk, you're going to get better.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty incredible, and it's sad because people just don't understand. But I do understand their disbelief, because I was that disbelieving physician 11 years ago. I mean, I would laugh at my partner in the emergency department who was eating his salad and wondering how is that possible? He couldn't possibly be healthy, until I was introduced by Sanjay Gupta to the Cleveland Clinic study by Esselstyn, and I knew about Ornish's study, but I just blew it off in my brain as being they were just freaks of nature. That got better, and I didn't really read very much about it or try to study it because I had a closed mind pretty much. I believed the medical literature, and I didn't see anything in there that said food could be medicine and that it would make that much difference, except for that one Ornish study was in the back of my mind. That was the seed was planted, but it didn't start growing until I got the second study from the Cleveland Clinic. And so hopefully with time, your friends will come to a better understanding and stop having their heart attacks like those people that Esselstyn was able to reverse their heart disease, and Ornish.
And the sad thing is the science has been there all along. One of the people that are newer to the classes, if you spend some time on nutritionfacts.org, realize that when you hear Dr. Greger digging into the science, it's like these studies have been there on various health topics and things. It's just, we don't hear about it. Charlie and I and Eric, we didn't learn about it in medical school or PA school because there was no money, there was no profit to be made from that information. So the studies are there, they've been done. It just doesn't see the light of day because there's nobody, promoting it or pushing it forward because there's no profit. So it's just like little gems of science that's there, a study for this, a study for that, and wow, you can really make a huge difference in your health with what you choose to eat, and also exercise and sleep and all the other things that we talk about in the classes.
Okay, any questions from anyone?
I first heard about that in 1981 when I got my second bout of cancer, and I didn't want to go through chemotherapy again and radiation, and so I started searching, and I teamed up with the Cancer Institute of Texas, and the first thing they did was a diet. They had me fill out what I was eating, and they said, you've got to cut out all red meat, especially all meat if you can. So that was my first foray, and I wasn't sure I could do it because I was in my 20s. Why would I why would I limit myself? And in the 80s, the whole awareness wasn't even what it is now, which is very limited. So it's been a journey since 1981 to figure this out. And I just went vegan, as Scott knows, just 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I don't know how long it's been, where I went plant-based because a lot of my friends were plant-based. So yeah. So there are groups out there that have known about it for 40 odd years. It's just people believing it and accepting it as a fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a journey, and it's sort of swimming upstream against the medical culture, but not completely. Times are changing, and there are a lot more groups now than there were 2 to 3 years ago, or for sure 5 years ago, and practically not much 10 years ago, so, and you're talking back in the 80s, 40 years ago, practically nothing at that time, except a few voices in the wilderness. Pritikin, McDougall, I don't know who else, Scott, back then, but. All right, let's share the screen one more time. We're doing pretty good. We just have a few more minutes, and we're on to, let's see.
30. Number 30.
Okay, so I wonder why I pushed that off the screen there. Hey, where'd it go?
You gotta scroll back to the left, I think.
Scroll back to the left, scroll back to the right. Oh, here, we scrolled down too far. There we go. Up a little further. That is so bizarre. Okay, so since that doesn't work, I just have to kind of bring it up again. I don't know what I did. But here we go. There's some questions. And we're going to, what is the cause of diabetes? I hope that you understand what that is. For the new people, you may not know. And should we be avoiding carbs? So let's kind of go over that. And these are really important concepts that you all should know about. Number 30 and 31. So, the myth as far as diabetes is concerned, let's see, where are we at? Yeah, the myth is that carbohydrates are the cause of diabetes, but when you think about what the cause is, you have to think about, it's not so much the elevated sugars that you're eating, it's more the fat, which is blocking the action of insulin. It's excess fat in our muscle cells that lead to insulin resistance and doesn't allow the sugar to enter the cell, so you get a rise in your blood glucose or sugar. It's a reversible disease of affluence, too much fat. And where does the majority of fat come from in our diet? Animal products. You don't get a lot of fat from eating plant products. You do get enough fat. You do not have to substitute any animal products to get more fat in your diet. You get plenty if you're totally whole food, plant-based. So let's see what Gregor has to say about this cause of diabetes for those of you who are new or haven't seen this before. It's an important concept.
After about age 20, we may have all of the insulin-producing beta cells we're ever going to have in our pancreas, and so if we lose them, we may lose them for good. Autopsy studies show that by the time type 2 diabetes is diagnosed, we may have already killed off half of our beta cells. You can do it right in a petri dish. Expose human beta cells to fat, they suck it up, and then start dying off. A chronic increase in blood fat levels is harmful, as shown by the important effects in pancreatic beta cell lipotoxicity. Fat breakdown products can interfere with the function of these cells and ultimately lead to their death. And not just any fat, saturated fat. The predominant fat in olives, nuts, and avocados gives you a tiny bump in death protein 5, but saturated fat really ramps up this contributor to beta cell death. Saturated fats are harmful to beta cells, harmful to the insulin-producing cells in our pancreas, cholesterol too. The uptake of bad cholesterol, LDL, can cause beta cell death as a result of free radical formation. So, diets rich in saturated fats not only cause obesity and insulin resistance, but the increased levels of circulating free fats in the blood, called NEFAs, non-esterified fatty acids, causes beta cell death, and may thus contribute to progressive beta cell loss in type 2 diabetes. And this isn't just based on test tube studies. If you infuse fat into people's bloodstream, you can directly impair pancreatic beta cell function, and the same when we ingest it. Type 2 diabetes is characterized by defects in both insulin secretion and insulin action, and saturated fat appears to impair both. Researchers showed saturated fat ingestion reduces insulin sensitivity within hours. But these were non-diabetics, so their pancreas should have been able to boost insulin secretion to match, but insulin secretion failed to compensate for insulin resistance in subjects who ingested the saturated fat, and this implies the saturated fat impaired beta cell function as well, again just within hours after going into our mouth. So, increased consumption of saturated fats has a powerful short- and long-term effect on insulin action, contributing to the dysfunction and death of pancreatic beta cells in diabetes. And saturated fat isn't just toxic to the pancreas. The fats found predominantly in meat and dairy, chicken and cheese are the two main sources in the American diet, are almost universally toxic, whereas the fats found in olive nuts and avocados are not. Saturated fat has been found to be particularly toxic to liver cells in the formation of fatty liver disease. You expose human liver cells to plant fat, and nothing happens. Expose liver cells to animal fat, and a third of them die. This may explain why higher intakes of saturated fat and cholesterol are associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. By cutting down on saturated fat consumption, we may be able to help interrupt this process. Decreasing saturated fat intake may help bring down the need for all that excess insulin. So either being fat or eating saturated fat can both cause that excess insulin in the blood. The effect of reducing dietary saturated fat intake on insulin levels is substantial, regardless of how much belly fat we have. And it's not just that by eating fat we may be more likely to store it as fat. Saturated fats, independently of any role they have of making us fat, may contribute to the development of insulin resistance and all its clinical consequences. After controlling for weight and alcohol and smoking and exercise and family history, diabetes incidence was significantly associated with the proportion of saturated fat in our blood. So what causes diabetes? The consumption of too many calories rich in saturated fats. Now, just like everyone who smokes doesn't develop lung cancer, everyone that eats a lot of saturated fat doesn't develop diabetes. There's a genetic component. But just like smoking can be said to cause lung cancer, high-calorie diets rich in saturated fats is currently considered the cause of type 2 diabetes.
So that brings us to the issue of carbohydrates. And one thing that we have kind of said over and over again, to the point where it's almost nauseating to you, is that we have not done a good job of differentiating the complex carbohydrates, which are actually healthy for us to eat, from the simple processed carbohydrates that cause inflammation and that are actually harmful to us. So saturated fats are really not healthy for us. And in my experience, any fat in the form, even of nuts or avocados, if you have too much of that, it's really difficult to control diabetics. So I usually encourage them, like Dr. Greger does, to eat no more than a quarter cup of nuts a day. And, you know, because that's like 10% of their calorie intake for the day. When you start getting up to 30% of your calories in fat, whether it's saturated or other, diabetics tend not to reverse their disease so much, in my experience. And so I encourage people to go easy, whether it's saturated or unsaturated fat, to evaluate their diets, see where they're getting the fat, and to avoid the processed plant foods that are become simple carbohydrates, the white sugar, and the donuts and the whatever it is, cakes and cookies, and you know, sometimes even breads. So just be careful, and if you're not getting the benefits you want, consider eating just foods as they're grown in nature rather than their processed forms. Any questions? Yes, Ed.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to briefly tell you about a case that was my first exposure to the risk of fats in the blood. It was way back in 1965. I was a long-term fan of the Kansas City Chiefs football team. And they had a young player who was absolutely in his prime. He was a magnificent physical specimen, sustained a knee injury in a game, and on the operating table began to bleed a little bit. He had a massive spike in his numbers, and in an hour and a half was dead from an embolism. And some few doctors had noticed a trend of certain heavily muscled people were subject to this. And I'm sure they all had high meat diets. But I was too young to even think about it much, but they were noticing even way back then that there was a relationship between fat in the diet and health.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say to reiterate what Dr. Greger was saying, because a lot of people hear about avoid saturated fat, but in the messaging and education in the public health, it's never, people, well, what's that really mean? What's saturated fat mean? And so the top 5 sources of the American diet, cheese is number 1, pizza is number 2, which is essentially more cheese. Number 3 is ice cream. Number 4 is pastries, so like donuts and pastries and things, and then number 5 is chicken. And you think chicken, I thought chicken was lower in saturated fat than red meat. Well, it is slightly lower, but because Americans eat so much chicken compared to red meat, it gets the number 5 ranking. So essentially it's pork, chicken, cheese, ice cream, pastries, all the processed oils and the animal products. That's where saturated fat is. But you'll never hear that from the government. They'll say, you hear the government say in the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology and all the official groups that make nutrition recommendations, you'll hear them all say cut down saturated fat intake, but they'll never say cut down meat and cheese and dairy products and oils and pastries, because there's too much. That's political. That's a political statement. There's too much money tied up in all that. So you'll never hear that from anyone official. So you have to come to class like this to hear that. So that's what that really means, or a good dietitian would tell you that, because like, well, where does saturated fat occur? And that's where it's at. I mean, there is some saturated fat, like Charlie was saying, in nuts and coconuts and things like that. So you don't want to go too crazy on those foods either, but a little bit's okay. But yeah, that's where you want to. So if someone that has diabetes and heart disease, you want to cut out those foods as much as you can to improve your diabetes and reduce your risk for heart disease and all those things. So it's foods that we're choosing. We eat foods. We don't eat nutrients. We a food is a whole package, and so it comes with lots of some good things and some bad things, and so it's a package deal. We can't just eat a food that doesn't have saturated fat versus a food that has this amount of protein or this amount of fiber or this amount of micronutrients and things. Food is a package, and so I think that's important to okay, well, what's the food packages that are highest in the saturated fats, and I just went over those. So I think that's important to remember.
So I have a question.
Yes, Karen.
As I look through the resources page, I don't know if I'm missing. I'm looking for like a chart or something that's got recommended foods and also kind of recommended meal plan for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as something to do with caloric intake for the day, using those foods. Is there any such animal?
Well, you can go out on the website, watch the class archives from earlier this year. If you haven't watched the website tutorial on the homepage, watch that, because it kind of gives you a tour of where everything is on the website. And then you could go back to I think it's like the 3rd class in January. There's a meal planning class. So you can watch that particular class, and I go over on the website also between the tutorial, which you can watch, and also the meal planning class. You can I go over all the different websites that have meal planning, have meal planners and recipes and all that stuff. And as far as calories, you don't really need to worry. Counting calories is not very accurate, and you don't really need to worry about that too much. But just start off with the maybe watching the introduction classes if you haven't seen those, watch the meal planning class, and then watch the website tutorial. You'll see where all that stuff is, websites with recipes and meal plans, and then there's all the cookbooks and recipes, and kind of a good place to start if that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yep, that works. Well, I liked it when Charles said, don't eat more than a quarter cup of nuts per day. I mean, that was helpful.
Yeah, and you could also do another bit of advice would be to start with the Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. And
Oh,
so you
okay.
can, that's a free app on your cell phone, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, and it kind of just tells you how much of each of the daily dozen to try to get into your diet every day. And it's a good way to that's a good place to start also. And it's just like, okay, have this many servings of fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains and all the different things to try to squeeze into your diet every day. It's kind of a fun thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Carrie, have you downloaded app on your smartphone? Like go to the App Store and do a search, and have you done that?
I have downloaded Dr. Greger's 12, and I've been doing it maybe for the last 4 or 5 days. But I noticed when you click on the little eye, there's a whole bunch of information
Yeah,
behind
that's
each one. And I haven't read all that yet.
Yeah, so click on the eye because that tells you the proportion size, like a half a cup, and it tells you the quarter cup of nuts and that sort of thing. And then it also gives you, if you scroll around on the page, the various kinds of options. There's a whole list of different beans and lentils and cruciferous veggies and fruits, and it's really quite extensive, and you'll find things that you like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And if you really need some extra help, don't be afraid to click on Lisa Chick's website, and she'll kind of go through some of that with you too. Anybody else have something more that they want to add here before we end the meeting? We didn't quite make it through, but it was close enough.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
I think last week or the week before, you talked about flax and flax meal and how it needs to be ground up to really get the benefit of the enzymes.
Yes.
I was wondering what effect cooking has on it. Does that like negate the whole thing?
I don't think so. I haven't read anything that flax meal will be destroyed if you cook it. So I think it's okay to put flax on something and bake it or whatever. I know we do our flaxseed. It is a good question. We do ours and we dump it on their cereal, and we actually do heat the cereal up.
And with flax, there is no enzymatic reaction like with the sulforaphane or with garlic. So nothing, that doesn't have anything like that. It's just long chain, or it's just a short chain omega-3 fatty acids. So the reason it's important to grind it is because if you just eat whole flax seeds, they'll just go right through you out into your stool. You won't really get any benefit. Whereas if you grind it, then it's the cell walls have been broken, it's opened up, and then you actually absorb it, and you absorb those short chain omega-3 fatty acids, which are healthy.
And the heat isn't gonna.
No, the heat shouldn't do anything to it.
No, it should be okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Good question. Yes, Marcia.
I pulled down that recipe from what Eric Colgrove gave us for the vegetable loaf.
Yeah.
From Pinterest, and I pulled it down, and it has two tablespoons of olive oil, which I would change to a broth because I use broth for cooking.
Sure.
And then they have 4 eggs. And I thought, wow, why would you need 4 eggs? But it says in a large bowl, whisk together eggs, mustard, and broth. And I thought, well, if I take 2 tablespoons of flaxseed with water, could I whisk that with my
Yes.
mustard and broth? And that would
Yeah,
make it,
you definitely could. It's an egg substitute. And I can't remember the amount. I think it's a tablespoon or 2 with some water that is for an egg or 2. And so you would just, I don't know if that's on the stuff, any of the stuff that you have, Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna look here.
I definitely, I definitely modified all my recipes. So yeah, I would definitely replace that oil. And for egg replacer, I still use the Bob's Red Mill. You guys ever use that?
mm-mm.
Yeah,
Here's
so
see what I got up there, egg substitutes. 1 egg is equal to all the different things here. These are all
Yeah.
egg substitutes. I have that on the website under the class handouts. Food
Which I find
substitution chart.
those tend to work well for oil substitutes too. That's what I find, that usually you can kind of use oil or egg substitutes to replace either of those. So I may use a little bit of both, one of those egg substitutes and some of this stuff, which is potato starch and tapioca flour and some baking soda and some psyllium husk is Bob's Red Mill. Yeah.
we used that for a couple years, and then Christine transitioned more to flax seeds or flax, but it works. And I don't know why she got away from it. I think we just weren't using enough of it to buy those bigger packages.
We wanted to see that substitution chart. Just here's the home page, and you just go to handouts. So hover over resources and then handouts right there. And then it's just on this list here, and it's down here, food substitution chart. So
great. Okay, everybody. It's been a fun session. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a bit about some different cooking options, and we're back to the sweet potatoes. That's stuck in my mind from this session. And anyway, we look forward to seeing you all next week, but we hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. And Scott, whatever
Me
you want
too.
to add.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well,
Everybody have
yeah,
a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, happy Thanksgiving.
It was a fun meeting for sure.
Yeah, we'll continue. We'll do more next week.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.